Hey guys, welcome back to the First Methodist Shreveport podcast. I'm here with someone people will probably recognize, the infamous Dr. Ashley Goad.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I've been waiting. I've been waiting for the hot seat.
I mean, your time has come.
It's good to be back in the podcast studio.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Because you've been here for quite a few.
Oh, yes. We've had several series, which have been fantastic.
You were the OG whenever we first set this place up.
That's right. Me and Samuel.
Mm-hmm.
Samuel and me. My goodness. My grammar has gone out the door this week.
Right. But today we're talking all about the saga of Ashley Goad at First Methodist.
Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it all started in an airport, which is just fantastic.
I'm telling you, every time I hear about your life, it's like just a new chapter comes out. And so I'm excited for everybody else to get to hear, how God brought you to this place and all of the amazing things you've gotten to experience while you've been here. So where do you want to start?
Well, let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
I think in March of 2013, I was living and working in Haiti. I was working with an organization called Solar Under the Sun, and they had partnered with Living Waters for the World.
And how did you get there? Like in the first place, how did you get to Haiti?
Sure. So I had been serving at a church in Houston for 5 years in Bel Air, Texas.
Okay.
And they had a couple of the guys in that congregation were involved with an organization called Living Waters for the World in developing this water filtration technology that they could take to other countries that needed clean water.
Okay.
So I had gone through the training at the Living Waters for the World training facility in Oxford, Mississippi, and soon another organization popped up called Solar Under the Sun, and they were developing solar-powered units that they could work in partnership with Living Waters for the World to do solar-powered clean water systems.
Okay.
At some point around, I worked at a church in... I worked at a church in Bel Air, Texas, and from there went to Northern Virginia near Washington, D.C. And then after that, I was a little sad of saying goodbye to churches. And so I went on staff at Solar Under the Sun as their executive director.
Whoa.
And in the process of that, the earthquake in Haiti had happened. So much money had come in to these nonprofits because of that, people wanting to help in Haiti. And so I set up shop in Haiti with a team, with a Haitian team to train them up on everything that we were doing as far as hosting teams that were coming down, how to partner them well with existing organizations in Haiti. And over that time, we set up 91 solar-powered clean water systems across Haiti. So in 2013, I had pretty much worked myself out of that job. Ansi had taken over things. Ansi is my brother. He's in Haiti. Ansi had learned how to host these teams well and how to work on the partnership agreements between the teams coming and the existing organizations there. Mm-hmm. And he had hired on several technicians to help keep the systems running whenever problems had come up so that they could go on circuit routes to ensure that things were being run properly.
Yeah.
And we created a warehouse by that point for spare parts so that we didn't have to depend on teams coming back and forth. So it had all worked out really well.
Right. That is quite the operation.
It was quite the operation. And I was so proud of Ansi and everything that he had done. And he is still doing. Just incredible. The same team of guys and gals that had been hired at the beginning are still faithfully serving now.
Wow.
And so that March of 2013, I had cholera the year before and then had just gotten another parasite, Giardia. And I just was not well, not healthy.
That'll do it.
Yeah, it just not the best time ever. And so I was in the airport in Haiti trying to get back to the U.S. and just get well for a while. And yeah, sure enough, that's when Dr. Shane Barton walked over to me because I was just laying flat in the middle of the floor and in the airport in Port-au-Prince. And he walked over and said, "Are you okay?" Because I looked pretty horrible. And that's where it all started. Now, I will never let Kay Ferguson and Jan Cox forget that they were nurses. They are nurses. And that they just stood over in the corner, refusing to come over to me
Just
and
somebody
check
with a
on me.
parasite just hanging out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But the fun fact about that was that Mark Sorensen, who is currently serving at First Shreveport, had found out while Nikki was in Haiti that he was going to move to the Woodlands, Texas. And so she knew she had been serving in the global mission director position. And so she knew that she would be, of course, moving with him.
Yeah.
And that position would be open soon. And so in the airport, I still have her card. And my first day in the office here, I found my card sitting in the desk that I had given to her.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, so it was not even a week later that Jonathan Beck, who was the executive pastor at First Shreveport at the time, that he called. And
Goodness.
he and I talked on the phone, and it was like best friends happening over the phone.
Really?
Love Jonathan Beck. Yep.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
And so you had you ever been to Shreveport
I had
or
never been
Louisiana?
to Shreveport. I
Okay.
was in Dallas for meetings for Solar Under the Sun. And so I
Okay.
drove over that next weekend in May of 2013, to meet with Pat Day and the executive staff and then SPRC. And then Jonathan and I went to Sushiko on the boardwalk, and he offered me the job.
That's incredible. And so it was a pretty easy transition, I guess, out of Solar Under the Sun, because you said you basically worked yourself out of
Yeah.
that job.
Yes, indeed. And so they're still running. Everything is still great. They've expanded now to different countries, and they're running really well. And yeah, I got here on August 1st, 2013.
Goodness. And what was your first impression of First Methodist?
It was big. It was big. There were a lot of people that I knew I was going to have to get to know, or thankfully got to know.
Yeah, because you came from a Quaker background.
Came from a Quaker background. Everybody, I think, has heard the stories that my great, 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 great grandfather, I think it's six greats, was part of the church leadership where I grew up at
Whoa.
the Quaker church. So my how many great, Nereus Barker was the first pastor at the church that I grew up at.
Whoa. And see, this is just like, I feel like your life just keeps unfolding. It's like an accordion. It just keeps getting bigger.
Well, it is so awesome. I was in Russia, as you are. I was in Russia in 2014, and I was sitting with Olga and Marta, and we were talking about our stories of how we came to know Christ.
Yeah.
And they were telling me their stories, and holy cow, just amazing events of how God revealed themselves to them. And I was like, guys, I just don't have that kind of story. You know, I grew up going to the church that my great, 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 how many ever grandfather, was the first pastor at. And they said, Ashley, that's an amazing story. Think of these generations that went before you and served as leaders of this church so that you could then come into leadership at that church too. And what a legacy that is. And ever since then, I've thought of my story as completely different. I love that story. So my church, Springfield Friends Meeting in High Point, North Carolina, just celebrated its 250th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wonderful. I got to go back recently for a funeral, and just an amazing celebration of life of Eldora, who was the one who had passed away, and just to see everyone there. And these are the people who raised me. These are my confirmation type teachers. These were the people in my youth group. These are the people who loved me so much and raised me to be able to be who I am today. So just an incredible legacy. And I love that church so much.
It's amazing how God just weaves all this stuff together.
Yeah.
And so that's insane. So you mentioned Russia. That's
Yes.
one of the mission partners we have.
Correct.
So what were the mission partners that were in place when you got here, and
Right.
where are we at now?
Great question, Corey. So when I arrived for the interview, Pat Day asked me a couple of questions. First, it was, we want a mission partnership on every continent. What does mission partnership mean to you, and what's the difference between transactional and transformational mission? So those were the big kind of things that he gave me.
Yeah. Sounds like Pat questions.
They're definitely Pat questions, but what impressed me so much were those are a little bit of how the buzzwords were changing in mission, so transactional and transformational, and the fact that he asked that question was the reason why I wanted to come.
Yeah.
So to know that I would have that support of building a really healthy, growing mission ministry here at this church would be great. So when I arrived, there was the Haiti partnership, and at the time there was Big House and Derivager,
Okay.
and so that was it to the extent of global mission.
And those are orphanages?
Those are orphanages or children's
Okay.
homes is how I like to call them, because
Okay.
they're not really orphans. They're economic type orphans that are there.
So it's like their parents can't afford to keep them, and
correct.
so the school provides for them.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yep. And so, so that was it when I arrived, and thankful that the first thing that happened is Kay Ferguson, Jan Cox, and Betsy Harrell and I. Those are the first 4 members of the global mission team. We got together and in that time discussed how is it that we're going to start? Like, where are we going to start? What are we going to do? And so we started with prayer. We started with what is partnership? And thankfully, the same time I started here, August 1st of 2013, I also started a Doctor of Ministry program. And at that Doctor of Ministry program, I decided what I would spend the whole year's researching was how to develop a healthy mission model at a local church.
That is insane. So you left Haiti, came to First Methodist,
Yeah.
started you had a whole new vision for global missions, and also started your doctorate.
Yes. It was great. Transition at its best.
Good. And I always hear people talk about a doctorate program as like, this is going to be your life. Like, you do not have kids, you do not get married. Like, for the next, 2 years,
Right.
this is your life.
Well, thankfully, they just intersected really well. I didn't have kids and I wasn't married, so there's that.
That helps.
But they intersected so well that it served everything that we were doing here at First Methodist served as my field research. And so that worked out really, really well.
Yeah.
The first thing that we did when I came in is there were 2 families that I knew and loved already out in the mission field. And the Baileys in Costa Rica, Will and Yolanda Bailey in Costa Rica, and the Boone family, Jeremy, Tamara, and their 4 kids in Jinja, Uganda. And so they were the first 2 phone calls I made when I arrived. And we
Okay.
had great phone conversations. I told them what First Methodist Church was about, what they had hired me to do.
Yeah.
The great thing is we were already friends. We already knew each other really well, had worked together for years. So we had that basis of a relationship. So that was easy as, okay, well, if we want to expand really quickly and put our thumbprint on how this is going to go, let's
Yeah.
start off with 2 really good, healthy relationships we know we could have. So that's what happened first.
And so what's the process of bringing on, like, you said you knew these people before, so what's the process of then, I guess, getting them related to First Methodist?
Right, that's a good question. So I met with them first on Zoom. I think by then it was Skype. I don't know if Zoom was around.
Safe
But
to say.
2013, it was Skype, I think.
Right.
So I had really good conversations with Will and then with Jeremy and Tamara. And then brought in the global mission team, Betsy, Jan, and Kay. We all talked together. We all had the Skype together. Everybody got to know each other. And we decided that part of the one thing about mission partnership was going to be a little bit of money. So we knew that was going to be a thing. How is it that we could pray for each other well? Is there an opportunity for teams and visits? What does ministry of presence look like? And so those were our 3 big things of trying to figure out with them as our test cases so that we could grow from there.
Okay.
And those were easy entries. I think we took our first trip to Jinja as a leadership team that December of 2013.
Whoa.
And by March of 2014, we took our first team from First Methodist, and I think it was about 28 people to work with
Whoa.
Will. So from the beginning, these were 2 really strong, good partnerships, and
That is incredible.
I loved that. And I think from the beginning, too, Will and Yolanda came here pretty quickly to visit our church, to start getting to know our church, and to see how we could be family together, whether it was here in Shreveport, whether it was there in Costa Rica, or in the in-between time.
Yeah. So what does that look like whenever someone is a global missionary or someone who's because they're in Costa Rica, right?
Correct, yeah.
So when they come to First Methodist, what does that partnership look like from their end?
From their end, I hope it looks like coming to a family reunion. So I hope that our missions ministry has become family across the world.
Yeah.
So that when either we go visit or they come visit us, it's this underlying of we want to be with each other, we want to abide with each other.
Yeah.
That's what drives our visits. So not necessarily a project, not necessarily what can we do for you. It's a how can we simply be together during this time and grow together as people and grow together as Christ,
Yeah.
with Christ. And so when they come to visit here, I hope it looks like for them a time that they can refresh their souls by being around people who love them and care for them, and that they're coming to visit family. And what do you do when you visit family? You eat a lot together, you pray together,
Yeah.
you go to church together. That's what I do with my family when I go visit. And I hope that that's what it feels like for them, that they just get to come and be with no obligations. Like it doesn't feel like an obligation. It feels like I just want to go see my people that I love.
I feel like for anyone who's seen these people like coming around the church,
Yeah.
it does look like there's basically a family celebrity there.
Yeah.
Like everyone that has interacted with these people, like, is just all about coming up to them, hugging them, praying with them, wanting to know like what's going on in their lives, and like you said, just that real connectedness for like the people who have been on missions and gotten to know these people
Yeah.
in Costa Rica when they, or like anywhere else where they've gone.
Yeah.
And whenever they come here, it's just like you're getting to see family again.
And I think that's part of my biggest responsibilities as the mission pastor, as the mission director, is creating that connectedness. So creating relationship, creating what brings us together, and making sure that that relationship lasts when we're not physically together. I love how everyone has come on board with prayer books over the years. Like we've Michelle and I have created these prayer books that our church members can pray individually every day for our mission partners. There's a card ministry that these missionaries get cards all the time from people in our church so that they can know that they're being thought of, encouraged on birthdays, on anniversaries, and even on the little days, like, oh, hey, your kids are out of school. Like, how is it feeling? How are you feeling? So that's been one of the biggest blessings, I think, for me, is to see our church. Like, I already loved these people, but then how our church came along and loved them as much as I did, if not more.
Yeah, I love that. Because, I mean, they're in the mission field, and they're usually people who are out of their own environment. So are these mostly people like in Uganda and Costa Rica who have left America to go there?
It's about half and half. It's about half and half. So what I've also loved about our missions ministry is no relationship is the same. No, none of the people are the same. They're not doing the same things. They're all very different. So you have this ministry in Costa Rica Mission Projects, and Will is from the U.S. Yolanda's from Costa Rica. In Uganda, they are from the U.S., but all four of the kids were born in Uganda. The Russians are Russian. Stefania and Dragos are both Romanians, though Stefania did live in the U.S. for most of her life. And so it's kind of an either or. Some of them are church planters. Some of them are on staff at a church. Some of them run a nonprofit. Some of them are pastoral care for people around them. So everybody has a little something different. But I think that that's all part of the body of Christ, that we all bring something different to the table, and we all get to appreciate that about one another, and knowing that we can't do it alone.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, and so we've got Haiti, Costa Rica, Uganda. And then I think Russia was the next, because, February of 2014, Chuck Rice came in one day and said, you got to meet my friend James Gillespie. And I was like, well, let me meet your friend James Gillespie. And Dr. James Gillespie was the headmaster over at First Baptist Church School, but he was a member at Broadmoor United Methodist. And he had been a part of this connection with the Russian Methodist Church for 25 years. Whoa.
And so in February of 2014, February, Siberia, Russia. We go over to meet First United Methodist Church of Ekaterinburg, Russia for the very first time.
If it's, I guess, trying to get like the hemispheres right. So if it's winter for us, it's also winter for them.
It was also winter for them. Yeah, it was negative 28 to 30 degrees every day we were there. Like your nose hairs would freeze when you walked outside. Crackling in your lungs. I don't know how I ever went back.
Whoa.
But that was the beginning of a really beautiful relationship. So
that's insane
for us. So
So like, what is that feeling like being out, like, I
Yeah.
guess Russia for what's the feeling of Russia first and then like the negative 20 something
Yeah,
degrees?
so Russia was interesting because I mean, all these places were new to me. I'd never been to Uganda, so the whole getting my yellow fever shot and going to Uganda was like the best thing ever. And so that was hot clay, exactly how I pictured Uganda would be, kind of thing. It was great. So then we get to Russia. It's freezing cold the next month. Just so cold, like it hurt to be outside. It just hurt to be outside. But everything you've ever pictured Russia being, it was Russia.
Yeah.
So going to St. Petersburg, this beautiful European port city, like just unbelievable. And then going to Moscow, and it was definitely what I pictured Moscow being. But then Ekaterinburg, and what I loved that very first trip to Ekaterinburg was walking into a church all the way around the world, could not speak the language, and felt right at home.
Really?
And I think that that's a testament to the body of Christ, is that we can walk into a church no matter if we speak the language, no matter if we worship in the same way, no matter what, but Christ unites us. And when you sit at the table and you take communion together, I think of it now when I'm taking communion at the altar rail here in the First Shreveport Sanctuary, that I'm taking it beside Olga in Russia, that I'm taking it beside the Boons in Uganda, that I'm taking it beside Will in Costa Rica, that we're all together at the same table participating in the sacrament. And that's when it first hit me that when we wanted to build a missions ministry, we wanted to build a family.
Yeah. And that's amazing. That picture, because I feel like we miss that sometimes, that like we are a church, but we're a part of the church. Yes. And so I love that. I love that you said that about just that feeling of unification. Okay. So Russia happens, and then
I believe that's how we stayed for a hot minute. Like we stayed that way for a while. In 2016, I was graduating from my doctoral program.
Okay.
And everything was going, I felt like everything was going really great at the church. So I got a doctorate. And then two of my classmates were John Woodward and Stefania Terasut. So John Woodward had left his position in campus ministry and was transitioning over to be the executive director of South Pacific Christian Fellowship.
Okay.
Well, we had done really well at getting a few of those continents checked off like Pat wanted us to do. We had not made a trip to the South Pacific yet. And so John and I sat down and talked about what it would look like to bring him on as a global mission partner, what it would mean for him to connect us to people in New Zealand and Australia. And not soon after that, he called and said, "Hey, I got a friend named Nate Hutchison. He's coming through town because his mom is at MD Anderson in Houston. And he's going to be putting her on a plane and driving back with his dad to Kentucky. He's a church planter in New Zealand. I'd just love for you to meet him." So I got together my mission committee. It was Kay, Jan, Keith and Cindy Payne. We all met at Rhino, just right down the road.
Nice.
And Nate and his dad came in. And I kid you not, within 10 minutes, I felt like we had known each other our whole lives.
Oh, wow.
It was a beautiful way of God connecting us together. And we just knew. We knew that we would be in partnership some way, somehow. So we went to go visit him in New Zealand the following year. And they were already thinking of their next church plant. They had planted a church in Christchurch on the South Island in New Zealand, and they were back in Auckland. They were being cared for by a local church there, and they really wanted to plant. They felt God wanting them to plant another church.
Yeah.
By the next year, we had partnered with them to do that church plant, and we were there for the first Sunday of Church Northwest in Auckland, New Zealand. So it was really great to be there and to serve communion on the very first Sunday at Church Northwest, and then going back this last year of seeing it was 250 people there.
Whoa.
Just incredible.
Which I feel like people probably don't get the magnitude of 250 people at a church in New Zealand, because I mean I didn't know this until you explained like the situation in New Zealand.
Sure, 95% unchurched in New Zealand. 95%.
Which is crazy because like we think of it's, I guess you would consider it westernized.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we think there's probably church on Sunday. There are probably like Baptist churches, Methodist churches, and all sorts of other religious organizations, and it's probably like a religious
Well, and I think we think of Hillsong over there too. Hillsong started in Australia, in Sydney, Australia.
I did not even know that.
And so, you think of these big names that are coming out from over there. And it has been a lovely thing to see the new generation, the younger generation coming up, and how they're being impacted by this and what that looks like for them. Because you have the highest suicide rate in the modern world, the Western world, in New Zealand. And you also have the highest unchurched rate. So it's interesting to see that, and to now see these younger people coming up through the church and being called into ministry and called into relationship with God. And I hope and pray that it's a revolution.
Absolutely.
Soon.
Have any of them have you gotten to talk to any of the new, like, younger people coming up?
Why?
Like, do they have a story of, like, why?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
And if you go on to the Broken Banquet podcast,
Hey-o.
you'll hear a few of those stories.
Just a slight plug for the
Broken Banquet podcast comes out every Monday on Apple, Spotify, RSS, iHeartRadio, all the things.
It's there. Is it on YouTube?
It is on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. People get to watch your lovely face on Monday.
Oh, no. We don't do video. We just do
Okay.
the audio.
All right.
Yeah.
That works, though.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Back to it. Yeah.
New Zealand.
And we met that same trip. We happened to meet Rob and Lynn Branham also. So we went over to Australia, to Newcastle, and they were friends of John's already, and that was part of the South Pacific Christian Fellowship tie-in. And so really got to know them really well, and felt a kindred spirit with them. Let that kind of percolate over the next year, and by the time we went back the following year, we asked them if they would like to be in partnership with us as well.
Nice.
So that's how that spread out. And in the meanwhile, Well, I was going to say, in the meanwhile, we also had our Europe partnerships developing.
Okay.
So a couple of things. I said Stefania. She had graduated with John and I from our doctorates together. Actually, she didn't graduate. Stefania, when are you going to finish that dissertation?
Hey-o.
Okay.
Call 'em out.
Yeah. So she, when I first met Stefania, she was living in Portland, Oregon. She was a Romanian who had left Romania with her family when she was 12 years old, had moved to Portland, Oregon. She was serving as the English ministries pastor at a Korean Presbyterian church. So a Romanian serving as the English pastor at a Korean Presbyterian church.
That's interesting.
She told me that she would never go back to Romania. And then when I saw her the next year for classes, she said, well, I'm going back to Romania for a wedding. And I was like, oh, that'll be fun. The next year she said, I've been praying about God to send someone to Romania to be a light for Christ. And I was like, oh, how's that working out? So then by the next time I saw her, she was, of course, making plans to move to Romania. Swore she would never get married. So while we were there one year, Kay Ferguson, Kenny, and I were sitting around a campfire with her, and had met her newfound boyfriend, and he proposed right on the spot while we were there.
Whoa.
So they've been married for a few years now and are doing ministry together. So
That's awesome.
That's been a beautiful relationship and evolution to watch in her life, and we've gotten to be all a part of that.
Love it.
And then Jessica Weaver, whose mom, Nina Peralt, is a member of our church, and she introduced us to Jessica, and we've loved being her home church. She's been serving with Teach Beyond for many, many years and doing missionary work before that too. And she's never had that kind of home sending church, and so we've gotten to fill that role for her, and I've really, really loved that. So
I love it.
that created everybody. That made us a big whole family, and yeah.
One step back. So could we talk about, like, what the vibe was in New Zealand and Australia, like when you got there? Because you said it's 95% unchurched. So I'm assuming, like, the weather in New Zealand and Australia was much more hospitable than Russia.
Than, say, Russia. Yes, it's wonderful. You know, their seasons are flipped from us, so just had to get used to that. But so in the winter there, it is rainy and cold, just rainy. It's called long white cloud. That's the actual name for New Zealand, is long white cloud.
Interesting.
Yeah, and but in the summer, it's hot and beautiful. So I love being in New Zealand.
Yeah.
It's definitely they're starting to experience this rise up of the Maori culture. So the Maoris were the indigenous people to the island, and so there's really a resurgence of let's respect and honor and build up the Maoris.
Yeah.
And so that's a beautiful thing to see, especially in the church, of how that honor and respect is flourishing in the church.
Yeah.
And, it's a beautiful thing. Keith and Cindy Payne came back from that first trip, and they had stayed after we had left. And they continued to have conversations with people just like in the hotel lobby or on their little trip across wherever they were going. And they would consistently say, it's just so interesting. This is the nicest people in the world, but they could care less about Christ.
Really?
And it's just a very interesting dynamic. And the Australians are the Australian and New Zealand culture, I figured, was going to be one and the same. Could not be more different. It's little nuances of things, but just really couldn't be different and more different. And so that culture of just everything goes culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
It's not so much hedonism as much as it is just like no one really wants to disrespect anyone else. What makes someone else happy?
Yeah,
or...
all of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there any more hostility in one place
There was
or the
no
other?
hostility at all.
Yeah.
No hostility at all. It just, I just plain don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me.
That's always interesting to see how you make, because a lot of people, whenever they think of missions, they think of people who are in poverty, who have a material need, and that's where Christ is going to provide. But the need that Christ actually fulfills in everyone's life is satisfaction in a relationship with Christ. And so it's just strange that there is no desire for it. And how do you create that desire coming from like a Western Christian culture? Because that is our mentality most of the time, is you have a material need and Christ can fill that. And instead, like, the relational need is what you need in both places, but I guess more so now in New Zealand and Australia because of the suicide rate that you talked about.
Well, and I'm going to even say this. So one of my favorite stories is about Pastor Mongerard coming from Haiti to visit for the first time. First time he ever stepped foot on American soil. He and his wife, Nimi, came. By the end of our trip, we had ridden around a lot, and he had pointed out to me these buildings that we kept passing over and over and over again. He was like, "What are these buildings, Ashley?" And I said, "Well, those are storage buildings." And he's like, "What do you mean there's storage buildings?" And I said, "Well, when people don't have enough room in their house, they'll put things in a storage unit." He said, "What?" He's like, "So do you just go visit your stuff on the weekends?" And I said, "Oh." And by the time I dropped him off at the airport, he looked at me and said, "Ashley, I pray for you every day, but I'm going to pray for you even more now." And I said, "Well, thank you." And he was like, "We may have economic poverty. We don't have a lot of stuff. We don't have storage units. We don't even need them. But you guys have got spiritual poverty." Ooh. Spiritual and relational poverty. And I think that's the first time that all of this smacked me in the face of, we're going out into the world to create this family ministry, this ministry of presence, all based on relationships. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
And how do we bring that here? And I think that that's something that Michelle and I have tried to work on very hard through the missions mindset. But can we also create it here at First Methodist Shreveport? When you're walking in on a Sunday morning, does it feel like you're walking into your family reunion? Like you're seeing the people that you love so much and you love doing life with? Or maybe it doesn't feel like that because you see them all the time. Maybe you see them all the time, and it's, but how do we create deep personal relationships with each other and deep authentic relationships with Christ? And so I hope that we've, made the needle move a little bit on that in these 10 years, but I know that that's something that I will long for here and wherever I go, is to make that the number one priority.
Yeah, I love that. And so was that any different in Romania? Or did you ever...
That's a good question. I don't know how to answer that.
Well, it's just like the vibe of Romania, because I think it was...
So Europe is about I don't know, 10 to 20 years behind New Zealand and Australia. And I would say that we in the US are about 50 years behind New Zealand and Australia.
Like in what way?
Heading in the way of unchurchedness. When you look at the statistics, it does really have a trend of, I think we here in the South are a little blind to it, but then you go to other parts of the country and you see.
Just like that apathy for
Exactly.
Christ. Yeah.
Exactly. And so in Romania, it's an interesting thing. Romania and Russia, I would say, kind of one and the same. Of you've come out of this communist culture where no God, no church. You know, you have the Orthodox Church and they're state run, but that doesn't develop much of a relationship with Christ.
Yeah, because there's no trust in the church because it's state run.
Correct. And so, so I think that that's trying to fight that fear-based culture. So even though they're on the other side of communism, living in a democracy or republic state, that it still is very ingrained in the culture of this darkness, this fear, living. So I think that we, as Christians, have this ability to be the light of Christ wherever we go. And how do we need to spread that light wherever it is that we go?
Yeah, that's interesting because they're like maybe one generation removed from communism.
Right.
It's like the story is still there. Like
It's still there.
Oof.
It's still there. Yeah.
But the people, like, were they warm or
Yeah.
was there still just like everybody's kind of at arm's length until you know you can trust somebody?
So my answer is kind of colored because when I go, I'm around the church people.
Yeah.
And so it's a warm, inviting atmosphere. But then when you're out in the city, it is different. But I think that that's the case wherever we go. You know, if we walk down the street in Shreveport, I hope that because we have the most churches per capita of anywhere in the Southeast, that we could walk down the streets in Shreveport and everybody's shining that light of Christ, so you naturally feel welcome, whether it's on the sidewalk or in the church. That would be the hope.
Yeah.
So when you're walking in Romania or walking in New Zealand, do you still see that same light of Christ because of the people walking? I hope that we can shine that light a little bit better.
Yeah. That's interesting you say that because I made a drive recently a few times to South Alabama recently. And there's one city on the way back. It just always stands out to me driving through it. It looks like it has more churches than Shreveport.
Okay.
Which, like, per capita, like, it's not a big town, but for the amount of people that are there, it's like you pass at least 10 churches within, like, 2 miles. And then, like, every business has a Christ-centered theme on the business or something. So it's intense. That was the only time that I've ever left Shreveport and seen more of more churches per capita.
Right, exactly.
Because I think someone said that there's like 40 churches on Uri Drive, or 30 to 40.
I haven't counted, but yeah.
Like
I'm sure
just
there
Uri
is.
Drive alone.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
So, anyway, not sure how we got there, but
Just went on a journey. We take the conversation wherever it leads us. Yeah.
So, is there anyone after that, or are
Right.
we? So, you've got Romania.
Yep, Romania and Czech Republic. And then we had, we can talk about this later, but we had kind of what was the culmination of being in relationship with all of these families and really knowing them. And on every trip, I kept saying, oh, the Boones, Jeremy, you would love Will so much. And Stefania, you really need to meet Lynn. And, you know, we just kind of kept going back and forth about who needed it. And some of these people, like Stefania had gone to Russia and Jessica had gone to Uganda and Will had maybe met someone here or there. But we brought everybody together at the same place at the same time and had that wonderful week together. And while we were there, we knew that John Woodward was going to be retiring soon.
Yeah.
And so we knew that there was going to be some transition there. And we started thinking about who do we want to join the family. And Matt and April Kiefer were two that we knew from Shreveport. They grew up in Shreveport. Pat Day was Matt's mentor. So I'd met him before Pat had retired. And so they naturally came into the family this year in January.
wow.
So there was that. And in the meantime, too, Caroline Cunningham, who I know you've had on the podcast here, she was one of our own and went to Romania to serve with Stefania through Jessica Weaver's organization. So that was a great connection piece, and we've loved having that too. So yeah.
And that was the Holy Land trip where everybody got together, or
No, it was in Italy.
Oh,
It was in Italy.
forget
We
about
had,
that one.
we had, well, a couple of things is, I did want to create even more connection, and not everybody's going to go to Uganda, and not everybody's going to come to the party for the Ugandans while they're here, and type things. And so whenever we started doing these big trips, like a Holy Land trip or any other pilgrimages, I would invite any of the missionaries that wanted to come, that they could come on this trip and then really have solid, good quality time with a few members of our church. And I think that that's created even better connection, that they get to learn together, to grow together, and spend 10 days together. So that's been a great asset, I think, to our missions ministry of creating connection. And then we, like I said, in July of 2022, we had a retreat where we invited all of the families with the kids to a villa in Tuscany, Italy. And it was incredible. It was looking back on it, I think it's the moment that heaven and earth came closest together.
I believe it.
It was incredible.
Oh, okay. So
Yes,
we finished building the global
we built
missions
it.
here.
We've built it.
And so what, looking back, has been just one of the things that stood out as far as either God's faithfulness or a journey that you went on that was the most impactful?
Well, that Italy trip was a culmination of everything that we'd worked toward. When I think about Pat Day asking me what's the difference between transactional and transformational, in my mind, I picture that banquet table. We had this long banquet table that sat outside, and we sat down for breakfast and dinner at that banquet table every night. There were 3 or 4 or 5 different languages going on around that table. There were kids running around like crazy. There were people sharing ideas of what they were doing. There were people sharing their hearts, like just completely being authentic and sharing their emotions, sharing their callings, sharing their things. And I sat back on that very first night and I said, God, look what you did here. You built these people who had no idea who each other were 10 years ago. They're sitting around a table now. They truly care about each other. They love each other. They're sharing your passion, your mission, your love for each other in their different contexts. And we just get to be a small part of that. We get to be a part of who it is, who they are, and what they're doing for the kingdom of God. And we get to be the supporters, the prayers, the encouragers, the pastoral care, all the things. We get to do that for them so that they can live into this calling that's so much greater than themselves.
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing how God worked through you, Ashley.
Oh, it's amazing how just God worked through all of us. It was this team effort, Kay, Jan, Betsy, Keith and Cindy Payne, Wayne Adara Mariano, Laura Sawyer, Linda and Jimmy Ray, Jessica Russo. I mean, just so many people that have been around my table at home, being part of this global missions ministry team over the years, and how their passion. I'll say this. I think in about 2016, 2017, our focus shifted a little bit. And about 16 or 17 is when we had most of the missionaries were coming in to visit here in Shreveport. And so as a part of that, we would, of course, all sit down as a global mission committee at my table. My table's where all the good things happen. And we would sit down, and it wouldn't be an interview. It would just be like, how is it with your soul? How are you doing? What can we do for you? And during that time frame, that 2016, 2017 time frame, the theme was we're lonely, we're isolated, we I mean, we miss friendship, we miss companionship, we just miss being with people, and it's just so lonely in the mission field. No matter if it was the Russians who were living in Russia speaking their language, but pastoral ministry can be isolating and lonely. And so no matter where they were, that was the constant theme that broke our hearts. And I think that that's when our mindset shifted, or really did that shift away from anything project oriented, anything let's do something oriented, to really let's be in relationship with these people. Let's treat them as individuals. Let's hear what they're telling us, and let's support them the best that we can based on what they're telling us. And let's be their family, no matter if they're in country or no matter if they're away.
Yeah.
So,
That's always great, because I'm sure there are times whenever y'all have been on mission, like go to visit global mission areas where there are mission projects that need to be done.
Sure, absolutely. As long as the relationship drives the project, then I'm all good for it. I just don't want to go and say, hey, I have this great project, let's do this.
Because it takes time for them too, to plan the project and to
course.
organize all the people when they get there. And if they're, like you said, completely in the state of needing restoration, adding a project to what they're already dealing with is not going to help.
I my number one job whenever I'm with any of our partners is to say, what can I do for you? And whatever comes out of that, that's what we do.
I love it.
I tell them when we go on a trip too, that when we're planning it, I want them to drop us off at the airport crying because they're going to miss us so badly and don't want us to go, instead of crying saying, thank God they're gone. I don't ever want to be that person.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
that team.
And I feel like the theme most people are going to take from this is thinking about everything that you've done in all of these years in global missions, but also knowing that you've led countless Bible studies as well.
I love teaching Bible study. I love it.
Just to think of all that you've done in this time, and at the same time have just led Bible study after Bible study and been in relationship with so many people here at First Methodist.
I finished my doctorate in 2016, and Pat looked at me and said, so you got some time on your hands? And I said, yeah, but you hired me as your director of global mission. What more do you want from me?
Oh, man.
And so, but what I also appreciated about Pat was that he said, you've got these other gifts. Come on, let's use them. Let's use them. Let's use them for the kingdom. And so I love to teach. I love to teach. Preaching is not my thing, but I love to teach. And my favorite Bible study, we had picked out, I think the first Bible study I ever taught was The Story, and Randy Frazee wrote that. And we had just this great group of people on Tuesday nights that came to my house, another great group of people that came on Wednesday mornings, and just had it was a year worth of studying together, learning together, and growing together.
Wow.
And that next year we decided to do his follow-up study. And so I made a phone call to try to find him, and it brought him here to First Methodist so that he could speak to the groups. And then we did a big thing in Bain Hall. And so that will go down as my all-time favorite.
That makes so much more sense now, because I remember when that event happened and how excited you were to meet this person.
Oh, my
goodness.
goodness.
So hearing everything that happened behind it now
Yeah.
makes a lot more sense.
Well,
I just thought you were a real fan of this guy.
Well, it was 52 or 32 weeks of studying the first go-round, and then we were kicking off another 32-week study that he did too.
Yeah.
And so we've been watching this guy on a screen for 32 weeks, and I'm like, I need to meet this guy. Yeah, thankfully, his wife came too. It was great. We got to spend some time together.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
So, do you feel completed?
Do I feel completed? Like I've completed
The task that you were called to.
task that I was
First
called to do.
Methodist?
No, I feel like there's so much more I could have done.
I think that's what makes you great.
No. I feel like, I hope that we've done something well. It's been 10 years, almost 11. And I hope that God will just say, you've been faithful. You've been faithful to the calling. And so there's so much more we could have done. Yeah.
Again, that's what makes you great. You haven't rested on your laurels. You haven't looked at anything as a season of rest.
No. First Methodist Church doesn't let you rest. I'm looking you in the camera.
Never. But it's
Yeah.
all good.
Yeah.
It's all good work.
Yep.
So, are you ready for some rapid fire questions?
Oh, I love a rapid fire.
All
Okay.
right.
All
Okay,
right.
let's
Ready.
get ready. I think we've got 10.
Okay.
So, this one's going to be related to, I guess, office life here at First Methodist, because if anybody who has had to come to your office knows you've been in a few different offices.
Oh, I have been.
So, which is your favorite office that you've been in?
All right. Well, I've been in 3 offices. The first one, I was in like the secretary office outside of Derek Joyce's office. And so for the first 3-4 years, I was in that office. And so it got to be so much that people thought I was Derek's secretary that I was like, I put up a barrier and like just made it so that when they walked in the door that they just come to his office. I did not like that office.
Really?
I really loved my little corner office. It was really sweet. But the office I'm in now was Bishop Hutchinson's office. And so when he retired and moved to Nevada, I really wanted to be in his office so that I could just feel his spirit every day.
Yeah.
And I do when I walk in.
And he left some things behind, didn't
He
he?
did leave some things behind. Lots of books, lots of little trinkets. We've decorated.
It looks great. If anyone hasn't been to Ashley's office yet, you need to check it
Oh,
out.
please do. Yeah. I'm starting to clean out, so come quick. Yeah.
All right, next one. This is a Global Missions favorite food from the mission field.
Oh, goodness.
Let's make this
Okay.
a 2-part. First one is going to be most wild food you've had.
Yeah,
and-
guinea pig from Ecuador. It's horrible. Like, and they would just like chew on the claws. Ugh. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's my. Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you. Oh goodness. I mean, there's a restaurant in Ekaterinburg that we go to that has these dumplings that are like mushroom and cream cheese. Oh, they're so good. They're so good. And then in Czech Republic, in Prague, there's this one place that has pork dumplings with a purple cabbage, and we tried to replicate it here and just can't make it.
That's
those are
interesting
good
because most people
ones.
think of like European food or like especially like that kind of culture is
Yeah.
like potatoes and onions.
Right,
And,
and it is a lot of that. Oh, there are. That's true.
goodness.
But just the fresh fruit in Haiti and Costa Rica, fish and chips over in New Zealand. Yeah. Good food. We don't go
Yeah.
hungry whenever we travel.
I feel like you and I bonded over food, so it's good to know.
I do like good food.
Okay, another Global Missions question.
Okay.
Scariest situation you've been in Global Missions?
That would be, I mean, Haiti. There's been a few close calls in Haiti. I believe I was alone. I think either I sent the team back or I was just alone. I'm not sure which. But I was in Haiti staying downtown by the police station, and they were trying to bring in a guy, and a shootout started. And I got a little nervous, and for whatever reason, I pulled the mattress off the bed to try to get under the mattress. Like bullets can't go through a mattress. Like, come on. But
I feel like
that was a
every
little
action
hairy.
movie you've ever
Yeah.
seen starts playing in your head.
Yeah,
You're like,
yeah.
okay, create
Yeah,
some
yeah.
kind of a barrier.
What could I do? So I did move the desk in front of the door. I don't know if that did any good.
Just in
That
case they
was-
knew that a special person was in here.
Yeah,
They
that
weren't going to be
was-
able to get to you.
That was a lot. That was a lot. I was on a plane coming back to the there was one point I couldn't get down to Lakai. I'm trying to remember, and so I had to stay in Port-au-Prince, and things were just not good in Port-au-Prince either. So Auntie, my brother, just kind of pushed me at the Marriott, which was fine, and I holed up there for 3 days, and I had this team of guys came in one night, and it was they were all looking like special forces kind of guys. And anyway, I was on the plane out with them.
They came for you?
No, they didn't come for me, but
Oh,
they were
okay.
just happened to be at the same hotel. And
Sheesh.
yeah, we were all on the same plane out. And I was like, what were you guys doing down there? And they said, And I was like, oh, okay, great. Great.
Good to know.
Great. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was another good time, too, that
Okay.
in Russia. Kenny and I were leaving Russia to fly to Istanbul and then to Uganda, or maybe it was Istanbul and then home, one of the two. It was one of those trips where we had several trips together,
Yeah.
several countries together. And we were both in different customs lines to go out, and they took his passport and they took my passport and they walked away. And I was like, And I was like, Kenny, what just happened? He was like, Ashley, they took my passport. And I was like, they took mine too. And so then they came and got Kenny and left me out. And they were like, you have to sit here. And I was like, oh, okay. And they took Kenny back. And it was like 45 minutes. I thought that for sure that he was gone, like in the, he was in the Kremlin. He was in the, I don't know,
Siberia.
something like he was gone. I was like, what in the world? But thankfully he came out later and
do you have a story to tell?
They questioned him for the visa application for Russia that you have to fill out before you go, or before they even grant you a visa.
Yeah.
It's very detailed. Like, who was your mom's mom? What was the last job that you had? What was 2 jobs before that? What was the first make of your car? I mean, it's just so much stuff. And they said that they asked him every question that would have been on the application to see if his answers matched. Yeah.
Goodness.
And so, that was a fun one. That was a fun one.
Okay, here's a different version of that. Because I've heard from people who've been to different areas of the world that spiritual warfare is different in different areas of the world. Have you encountered any sort of like spiritual warfare, like where it was almost tangible?
Ooh, many times in Haiti, voodoo is very prevalent in Haiti. And we were, this is a good story. We were in Haiti doing a clean water system. This was before I came here, installing a clean water system. And we had a voodoo village right beside our site. So every night going to sleep, they were banging on the voodoo drums. One morning I woke up, there was blood all over my door and a dead chicken laying on my doorstep. And
not like a rotisserie chicken.
It was not rotisserie. It was just neck slashed. And so it was a very like, what in the world? Well, 2 days later, every single one of our team members got sick. Like sick. Like I lost 24 hours. I don't even remember this whole, and we couldn't figure it out. And all I could think about was that blood on my door and the chicken that was dead and what kind of hex that they put on us. And, but sure enough, we found out that they had been putting chunks of ice into our water cooler and the ice was dirty water. And so that was it. But
like the voodoo people had?
No,
or
just the people at the site. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They were trying to be nice, putting ice in our water because it was so hot. And, but yeah, it was dirty water.
Is it still like a Montezuma's Revenge over there?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. I haven't tested a well or any water source in Haiti that wasn't contaminated. Their water table is just so high. And so, yeah.
Goodness. Well, glad you made it out.
Thank you very much. That was before cholera and Giardia.
So maybe the chicken did get you.
Maybe it was the chicken. I don't know.
All right. So, favorite Bible study you've taught here at First Methodist?
I think that story and the Believe was a really good one. I've loved these Sandra Richter ones that have been about Epic of Eden and the Isaiah study that we did. I really loved it when men started coming to Bible study too. So it wasn't just me teaching women; it was men and women, and so that was kind of fun.
Issue? Like whenever you teach a Bible study, do most people assume that it's going to be women's ministry?
For like 2 seconds, I was the women's ministry person, and so I think that's where. But then I had all kinds of folks coming, which was great. Young, old, men, women. It was great. Yeah.
Well, good. Speaking of teaching, favorite podcast series that you've done?
Podcast.
Because you were an OG from the beginning when we started these.
I love, So Samuel and I did almost 50 weeks for Conversations About Jesus. And that was, I still watch some of them because they were just it was so fun and it was so natural. Yeah. And being with Samuel every week for all that, it was just so good. It was so rich and good. I loved the How Can I Keep From Singing with David Hobson too. I learned so much from David, and I look back on those and I'm like, goodness gracious, he's a wealth of knowledge. He is a wealth of knowledge. So David,
if you're listening, we're going to get you on again soon.
Yes. Yeah, do it. Yeah, I think those 2 series were my favorites.
Nice. And so,
of course, the Broken Banquet podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Another subtle plug. Okay, so we have here most powerful movement of God in global missions. Is that the culmination of everything in Italy? Or
I think so. When I picture the banquet table of heaven, I picture that table now, and Yeah. I think in bringing the kingdom of heaven here on earth, that was feeling it. Yeah.
Most surprised you've ever been about something in another culture?
Oh.
Like where kind of just American culture really ran up against this?
Oh, interesting. I don't know, Corey. I don't know if I have an answer for that.
I feel like that might not be a great question because you've probably been desensitized to American culture having been in so many other
Americans
places.
are so stupid, and I
Yeah.
still get loud and obnoxious at times. And Whitney Hutchison uses the phrase to shed our Americanness. So if our Americanness is keeping us from sharing the gospel of Christ, if it's being a hindrance to someone hearing the gospel,
Yeah.
we need to shed those parts of us and present it in a way that will be understandable and receivable by the other culture.
What do
That's
those
not
look
to
like?
water down the gospel at all,
Yeah.
but that's to how can I shed part of me and my personality and my culture to help you understand this better.
And what is that like? Because a lot of people, at least Caroline that we talked to and Jessica, have said that Americans stand out like a sore thumb. And I've got
Oh,
a cousin
yeah.
in the Philippines, and he said Americans stand out like a sore thumb.
Oh yeah. Oh
So,
yeah,
like,
we
what
do.
is it about us that?
We're loud.
Okay.
Everything has to be our way. We're entitled. I think those are the biggest things that
Yeah.
just off the top of the head, like you can see a group of Americans versus a group of Europeans and can tell the difference. I think the fashion's a little bit different too. I think the air of curiosity as opposed to a judgmental nature, I think I find people much more curious in other parts of the world as opposed to feeling very judgmental in our part of the world. Americans are very patriotic.
Yeah.
Not so much around the world unless it's World Cup time or for soccer or for rugby or cricket, one of those things, but very patriotic. I don't think you would go anywhere else and see somebody wearing like an American flag on them. Like you wouldn't go to Australia and see somebody wearing the Australian flag.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so we stand out.
Yeah.
Like you can just tell. You can just tell. Yeah, Americans.
Ugh, those guys.
Those guys.
Back-to-back World War
Yeah.
champs. Ugh, who
Yeah.
needs them?
And we do think that we do everything right. Like that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Like if it's different, it's not different, it's wrong. And
Yeah.
so there's that
Have there ever been times you've seen people do stuff better than Americans?
all the time.
Okay.
All the time. Traffic circles are amazing. In every other country other than this one, traffic circles.
I was about to say,
Yeah.
other than this one, because I feel like anytime someone happens upon a traffic circle here
yeah.
in America, like
Well-
it just goes sideways.
Well, we don't know how
fast.
to use them.
Yeah.
So there's
and like
that.
they're not consistent.
No.
Because like again, driving from here to Alabama, if you pull off the interstate, you don't know, you have to look to make sure.
Yeah.
Is this like a roundabout or is this like just a right turn?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yep.
if like I guess it's the consistency. 'Cause
Right. Sure.
if you're in a city that has a bunch of them, you're like,
Yeah.
wow, this is great.
Right.
Because like my wife watched my opinion changed in real time whenever we were driving in a city for a while that had a bunch of roundabouts, and like we came up to one, and I was like, this is awful. Like, why don't we just have stop signs? And this would be so much easier. There'd be less accidents. And then I just like went through it, and there was no stop, and I was
Yeah.
like, never mind, that was great. Like that was much easier than being at a stop sign and having to wait for someone else. Like, I could
Yeah.
just go in this
Here goes.
roundabout and just go straight.
Right.
So anyway, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
We're not the best. We're pretty amazing, but
Well, yeah. I mean, we can flush our toilet paper here. I really appreciate that.
the little things.
It is the little things, yeah.
All right. So, favorite piece of First Methodist history?
Yeah, you mentioned this earlier, and I'm still not sure. I do love that we have a rich history and that we stayed downtown, that we are a downtown church and we've embraced that.
Yeah.
I do love that about us. I don't know. I don't know.
Can I tell you mine?
Yes.
It's unverified, but
Okay.
I've heard this from at least, I think, 2 people.
Okay, great. Then it must mean
So-
it's true.
There was a point where everything around us were like little shotgun houses and whatnot, and it was basically living in gangland downtown. and there were turf wars, and our church, First Methodist, had done outreach as far as like dental programs for the local community. They'd done like swimming programs, teach kids how to swim and shoes and whatnot. And we were so impactful to this community that the church allowed graffiti on the church only for the purpose that it was a sign from one of the gangs that the church itself was protected by that gang.
Wow.
Again, unverified.
Okay.
Please don't fact check me on that.
Did Jay Sawyer tell you?
I think it was Claiborne.
Oh, okay, Claiborne.
I think it was
It
Claiborne.
could be true then.
Yeah, I mean, he's another guy we want to have on the podcast.
Oh, gosh.
Just 'cause,
I think that it would be great to have Claiborne on and just for hours at a time and just go through years and record the history of this church to preserve it. That would be great.
yes, I would love that.
Yeah.
Favorite boy band.
Oh my gosh, I love a boy band. I do love a boy band. You know, I used to have up the little cling things in my window of One Direction.
I am aware.
Oh, so good.
I think those are still in Derek's, or like that little.
No, just the outline of it. Because I took them down finally when I moved after my third move. I finally took them down, but you can see the outline of dust on the window. Yeah, it's great. Well, I did love One Direction, and before that, I loved NSYNC. So the fact that NSYNC is on Justin Timberlake's new album just makes me very happy. Very, very happy. I love a boy band.
We love that about you, Ashley.
Thanks, Corey. Thanks. Yeah.
Anything we've talked about, or anything we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
No, I think I'll just say this. If we are reflecting, I love this church so much. I love the people. I love the way that they've embraced me, a North Carolinian, outsider, could care less about LSU.
Shots fired.
But I love it. I love the people here. I love the family here. And I'll miss it. I'll miss it so much. And I'm thankful that Chris will still have not just a toe, but like a foot or an ankle or a leg in Shreveport. And we'll have to be back here quite a lot for his business. And now we have Hank. Hank Harbuck was born a couple weeks ago. So I'm thankful that I hope that this is not the end of the story with First Methodist Church, that this is just a different season of ministry, that I feel like we're all working toward the kingdom of God coming here on earth. So how will we continue working and walking this road together? So I think First Methodist, I love our staff. I love this congregation. I love our people. I love our people.
If there was a message you wanted to leave with the church as far as like what you see for the church as beneficial, what would that be?
Relationships are the most important thing that we are and do. I think that our relationship with Christ needs to be the forefront of our minds always. And how can we fall in love with Christ anew every single day? How can we ask for him to reveal himself to us in a new way every day? Yeah. And so continuing that growth of discipleship and loving Jesus, and then continuing that relationship of being a united body of Christ. That relationships are so important. And how can we continue to love and grow together?
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Goad.
Well, Mr. Hinton.
It's been real.
It's been good.
But it's not over.
It's not over.
It's not over.
It's not over.
We'll see you again soon, hopefully.
All right. High five?
Yeah, high five.
Boom.
All right, guys. We will see y'all next time.